really care, baby. You're looking over the line, yeah. You'll have the time of your vision real quickly. Make a tourist style. Coming your way today, got me there. They can't breathe and they all outside. Lady, you're still the last one. They come I don't want you to buy.
Good evening, everybody. This is Caperoni, and today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Can't believe a whole year has gone by since the last conference call we had, but we didn't feel there was anything that was obviously significant enough to talk to everybody about, but we always do an annual conference call or a year-end conference call, and so here we are. And I just want to welcome everyone to the call, and hope everyone's having a good holiday season, and you begin your festivities and so on. So again, today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. We believe DinarAlert is the most advanced Iraqi dinar intel website on the net. And for those tuning in for the first time, if you've never been to DinarAlert, the path is dinar, DinarAlert.webs, W-E-B as in boy, S as in Sam.com, DinarAlert.webs.com. Or you simply can go to Google and type in the words DinarAlert and the website will come up. The concept was simple. It seems like it was 25 years ago now, but Bob, who started the website, has since passed and turned the site over to his son, who is still operating it. And he wanted to provide a great research site for the Iraqi dinar investor without outside influence from advertisers or dinar dealers. And that's pretty important. We've noticed over the years now that most of these websites are skewed. They're posting misleading information to try to encourage people to continue to buy dinar and so on. And Bob was so far ahead of his time by creating a website that was all about the truth and the facts. The concept, as I mentioned, was simple: to provide a great research site for the Iraqi dinar investor without outside influence from advertisers or dinar dealers. Bob put together a group of what he called technology experts, translators, bankers, stockbrokers, and research gatherers to provide the most accurate information available in regarding what he called the pending appreciation of the new Iraqi dinar. And then, of course, the website offered two great choices: the DinarAlert cellular text service and or the DinarAlert voice call to landline to members who truly wanted first knowledge upon a change in value of the Iraqi dinar. He highly recommended one of these two services to all the members, and because he believed really strongly that this group would know before anyone else. So if you're ever interested in that, you can sign up for it. It's on the website. There is a one-time fee. It's $7.95, and then you either get a text or a voice call when there is a significant change in the value of the dinar. The website, for the most part, for those who are going there for the first time or haven't been there before, it's free to use. We discuss various topics on the website. There's also various tabs on the site, and we'll kind of talk to you now about how to navigate around when you go there. There's a chat room, and you can click on the chat tab, and it's a live chat where you can be kept up to date and informed on what's happening in and around Iraq. That chat room is kind of quiet lately. There's not a lot of activity in there. We used to always be in there in the evenings, but for the most part now, it's only if there's something that's significant where there's people in there. There's the forums tab, and there's also the research library tab. The forums tab and the research library tab are where news is compiled. The research library is what it is. It's a research library. More professional documentation and so on is kept there, and anybody can go there and look up that information. The forums are where we post on a daily basis news in and around the Middle East and Iraq. And of course, it does take, how to say this, DinarAlert asks for support to support the website, and so by making a monthly donation, you gain access to the forums. And as I mentioned, the forums are what are updated on a daily basis. And there's also some of my research from over the years that are kept in there as well. So because, again, the website is not supported by outside influence, we ask our members to make a personal monthly donation to help support the website, and that gives you access to that additional functionality. Conference calls, these calls, we give you up to the minute analysis. We're excited to introduce tonight my good buddy E. Norsty, who I've been friends with now for 15 years. Myself will be hosting the call. We're going to give you our unique insight and perspective into the investment tonight. You can check the conference call tab on the right-hand side of the website for any posted replay or other posted replays or dates of previous calls if you want to listen to them as well. So do you tweet? Do you have a Twitter account? I assume a lot of you do, because That's kind of where I communicate a lot nowadays. If you do, you can follow me on Twitter. And again, I am Caperoni, Kaperoni. You can find me on Twitter and at Caperoni. So you can just type in at Caperoni and then follow me. Integrity is important at DinarAlert, whether you're simply reading a post from one of the volunteer researchers or browsing the forums or the research library. Getting quality information without false rumors or hype is imperative. Knowing the motives or incentive of a website is also just as important. At DinarAlert, we avoid all of these issues by not having any contractual advertisers or dealer influence. DinarAlert is solely supported by its members, for its members, and any item purchased on the site also helps support the operational expenses of DinarAlert. So that means if you were to go over and pick up a t-shirt or a hat or something like that, it does support the operational expenses as well as making a monthly donation to support the website. As I mentioned, Brandon, who now runs the website on behalf of his father, made changes a few years ago to help make the site self-sufficient because DinarAlert has no advertisers and now relies on donations to cover the operational expenses of the website. A donation is required, as I mentioned, for access into the forums. If you have any trouble with the donation or getting access to the forums, you can use the Contact Us tab and ask for help. Bob's son Brandon will promptly get back to you. We only hold these calls, again, when we believe there is something factual that benefits its members. You won't hear made-up stories. You won't hear any concocted information on this call. The website, like other websites do, Bob was so ahead of his time years ago when he created DinarAlert for those who truly care about learning the truth about the Iraqi dinar investment. So tonight, again, is our year-end call, and we'll be discussing what Iraq has accomplished this year and what to look forward to. So on behalf of the staff, of moderators, myself, Caperoni, T-Girl, Revbo, Tammy44, Administrator Brandon, we'd like to welcome you to the call. Let's see here. Again, if you haven't been to the website or you want to go to the website, you can just go there. It's www.dinaralert.webs.com or simply Google the words DinarAlert. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am Caperoni. I've studied the Middle East, Iraqi politics, Iraq's economy, and the banking system, including the dinar now for over 14 years. I've written hundreds of research chats and various posts. In doing so, I do this to educate and inform even the most novice investor. I came to DinarAlert with my friends, contacts, and an Arab translator back 14, 15 years ago to do the best I can to inform and to provide information and not mislead or create hype. Along with my friend Enorsti back then, who will be on the call in a little bit here to help decipher Iraq's progress this year with all of us. This team over the years has followed, educated, dissected the progress in Iraq. In many instances, with our research, we're kind of like detectives. We put the pieces of the puzzle together. As well, we document everything, and all of it is kept in the Caperoni and Friends section for your reading. You can really become a student of your investment if you take the time to read those chats. I encourage all of you to listen and to study this investment. I have done my best to provide accurate chats that are posted in the DinarAlert forums. Please take the time to read those chats. We believe in fact-based research. DinarAlert's slogan is no rumors, no hype, just solid intel regarding the new Iraqi dinar. Again, I'm proud to say tonight that none of this could be done without the help of many contributors, some of which are on the call. Our admins, article researchers, chat room mods all make it work, and we thank them. So for those listening for the first time, this call may be a little bit eye-opening. We're all about facts and truth, and learning the process, the fundamentals of how monetary policy works, how that interacts with a transitional economy. There is no arbitrary revaluation or reinstatement. That's guru nonsense. That's not how monetary policy works. Monetary policy is like any other technical occupation, such as when you see a doctor. No doctor gives a patient a random drug in hopes that it cures the patient. A doctor performs tests, etc., to diagnose problems and before administering any treatment. This is similar to how the Central Bank of Iraq works. The central bank has to follow strict rules, processes, as well as rules and processes from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They use this information to design a monetary policy that combats the effects of a growing economy. These are proven strategies and techniques used by other central banks as well around the world. So tonight we're going to talk about these the best way we can to help you become educated in this process. So tonight on the call we're going to have Norsi, better known as the Professor. We hope tonight to bring you some great insight, some perspective, some clarification into this investment. So I don't know if Steve is on the call yet. He usually comes on about 7:20 or so when we have him, so that would be about another 5 minutes. But if he's out there, you can just see if I can see him, or if he can unmute. If he's out there, I think it's a star. Let's see here. I'm just going to scroll. I think it's, it might be star 6 to unmute. Otherwise, I'll have to look for him and see if I see him anywhere. I don't see him yet. So we'll just continue on. So quite a bit has been accomplished in the last several months in Iraq. Of course, over the last year, they held an election, but until recently, they were unable to form a government. This is still a very complicated time in Iraq, and corruption remains at the highest priority in Iraq with the new Prime Minister, Al-Sudani. He's indicated that this is going to be his top priority, along with developing the private sector and creating a strategy of openness to the world. They continue to have a significant financial and economic issues as well to deal with. And of course, they still have to deal with the effects of the economy, inflation, and COVID-19, all while trying to implement these reforms. Passing laws through Parliament also remains a key component to getting investors and investment into Iraq. As we read tonight through some articles, you're going to hear that over 100 laws that relate to the economy are still stalled. As most are aware at this time last year, the central bank devalued the dinar from 1170 to 1460. This devaluation was deliberate, with the intent to stimulate the Iraqi economy to create jobs and manufacture products within Iraq rather than to pay high prices for similar goods being imported. The central bank stated this was a one-time devaluation and will last probably a year or longer, well into 2023. There are other benefits as well, including the demand on the dollar. We will talk about why they did this devaluation as we get a little further into the articles. The gurus like to talk about an RV or revaluation. They like to talk about call centers, back screens, blue screens, all kinds of nonsense, or boots on the ground information of some rate change that's coming. It's not true. They can say it every day, but it's still not true. I can say this with confidence for several reasons, because mathematically it's not possible, not to mention some of the activities that they currently do contradict such an event. First, there's over 83 trillion dinar in circulation, people. Not billion, trillion. over 83 trillion dinar in circulation. If they were ever going to significantly RV that dinar, they would have to cover that money. There's no country in the world, in fact, all of the world's money added together doesn't even equal 83 trillion, I don't believe, at this time. So it's impossible for them to have a significant RV. Some of the other countries in the Middle East, people have asked me about in the past about how could Kuwait RV or some other Middle Eastern country. Well, most of those countries only have about 40 billion dinar in circulation. So it's much more logical for them to be able to cover a currency revaluation with only 40 billion or so in circulation. It is impossible, though, with 83 trillion. As well, there remains reasons such as the daily auctions that hinder or prevent the dinar from achieving freedom or access to the principles of supply and demand. Of course, Iraq remains also currently under IMF Article 14, which is a kind of a developmental stage for their banking system. Gurus will tell you that they're reducing the dinar, or an RV is about to happen. Small denominations are coming out. Again, this is more nonsense and simply not true. So tonight we're going to cover these articles. We're going to describe what Iraq's plan is over the next year. We're also going to talk about what Iraq is really doing regarding the economy and the banking system. And as soon as Steve gets on the call, we will start those articles and go through each one by one and kind of give you guys a little update. So let me see if I can find Steve and bring him on the call. I'm going to have to look for him here. Hold on just a second. I'm still looking for him. I don't see him on the call yet. I expect he's going to jump in here any minute. So I guess what we could do is we could take a small break, and if those want to step away and grab a drink or use their bathroom or something, you're welcome to do that. And I'm going to put you guys all on hold here, and then we'll come back in just a few minutes. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. All right, I'm back on the call. Steve is on the call. I just need to find him here. If he's out there, he needs to enter his code so that he can jump on, because I will never find his number without him. Oh, I did find him. All right, is that you, Steve?
Yeah. Do you want me to hang up and call back on the other line? This is fine the way it is.
No, you're good. Just the way, now that I found you, that's fine. So.
All right. Sorry, bud.
Yeah.
You gave me two choices and I picked the wrong one. That's part of life.
Well, Steve, welcome to the call. And I don't know if you want to talk to people first, or.
Well, have you started? You gave your intro, right?
Oh yeah. We're waiting on. I was waiting on you before we begin the articles.
Well, let's just get started. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So what we're going to kind of talk about then is kind of the accomplishments that Iraq has had over this last year. Of course, a lot of people don't talk about just sort of these are just important things that are good achievements. And so the first one is going to be the International Monetary Fund expects the Central Bank of Iraq reserves to rise up to $100 billion before the end of this year. So the International Monetary Fund expects the Central Bank of Iraq's foreign reserves to rise to $100 billion in 2024. So actually they expect it over the next 12 months or so. In the final statement of the Article 4 consultation mission with Iraq for the year 2022, the fund's experts said Iraq's economic prospects are positive in the short term, but weaknesses can clearly manifest themselves in the medium term, and we expect Iraq's oil productivity to rise gradually from 4.4 million barrels to 5 million barrels per day by 2027. Statement added the growth of real non-oil GDP is expected to accelerate and reach 4% in 2023, thanks to the stimulus that arose from the Emergency Support for Food Security and Development Act. Before that rate moderated to reach 3.5% on the medium term. In the statement continued within the framework of baseline expectations of a decline in global oil prices and the continuation of the expansionary stance of public financial policy, the balance of public finances and the balance of external balances is expected to decline and turn into deficits by the year 2025. And in addition to, it is possible to reach the central bank's foreign exchange reserves could peak out at about $100 billion in 2024 and then decline rapidly over the medium term. A few days ago, the Central Bank of Iraq announced that cash reserves have crossed the $90 billion barrier for the first time. So what do you think about that one, Steve?
Well, this one's a good one. There's a plus and a minus and a plus. You know how these always work out. The first thing I noticed was that Iraq's economic prospects are positive in the short term, but weaknesses can clearly manifest themselves in the medium term. So the question is, what is the difference between short term and medium term? I think we find the answer to that when you go down to the last paragraph, where it says, within the framework of baseline expectations of a decline in global oil prices and the continuation of the expansionary stance of public financial policy, the balance of public finances and the balance of external balance is expected to decline and turn into deficits by the year 2025. And in addition to that, it's possible to reach the central bank's foreign exchange reserves peak at about $100 billion in 2024. So it would appear that the short term is between now maybe and the end of next year, and the medium term is not until maybe 2025, and that's, which means that's good to me, because it says in the middle paragraph, the statement added the growth of real non-oil GDP is expected to accelerate and reach 4% in 2023. So they're saying, and that's the growth rate. It's not just 4% of the economy; it's 4% over whatever it is now. So next year we're going to finally start seeing real non-oil investment growth. But that's the good news, and then it says at the end that it will, in the medium term, it's going to drop. So what we don't know is why they're saying that it's going to drop precipitously in the medium term, like 2025. Well, here let me read it again to you. The next to last paragraph. The central bank's foreign exchange reserves peak at about 100 billion in 2024, and then decline rapidly over the medium term. That would be 2025, and maybe even all the way out to 2027. Now, the question would be, why would couple things. Why would the reserves decline rapidly over that period of time? Well, I just have a guess. I don't know if I'm right or not, but it seems to me they've gone way out of their way to get their reserves up to a level that makes, and you're going to read another article later tonight, that indicates that they're going to rate this rise in the reserves makes the currency, even at its current rate, one of the strongest in the country, in the world. And that's hard for us to understand because we always thought it was like toilet paper. But the fact is they have more reserves than any other country relative to their money supply than any country in the world at 90 billion. And they expect it to go up another 10 billion within the next year, during the next year or so, year and a half. So the question then becomes, why would they decline rapidly over the medium term? That's between 25 and 27. Well, I can give you one speculative answer. If they floated the currency, then there's not going to be a need for them to have huge reserves of $100 billion US dollars to cover their currency, because as we've discussed many times before, once they float, the dinar starts to rise in value, and as it rises in value, they start reducing the money supply. They get rid of the 25K notes, and you're gonna read something tonight that's going to say they're going to issue a smaller note, and over the next, from short to medium term, between now and 25, 27, they're going to not need to have these huge reserves to cover their entire money supply. That's the way I read this. If I'm wrong, well, we'll find out. What do you think?
Well, I agree, and it sounds like they're kind of giving you a timetable where, we're not going to see anything happening right now, but over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see significant economic growth away from oil.
Well, we've heard that so many times. But actually, you're going to read something tonight that does indicate there's movement that direction. I would ask you one question. This first paragraph, or second paragraph, I missed it. Iraq's economic prospects are positive in the short term, but weaknesses can clearly manifest themselves in the medium term. What do you think that refers to? So they're saying that between now and maybe the time when we float, everything's looking good. We're going to get higher and higher in reserves. The oil market seems to be secure at $100 and something a barrel. But in the medium term, 25, 26, 27, they're seeing weaknesses can clearly manifest themselves. I wonder what they think that it might happen. Well, they're pushing themselves way out there, 2 or 3 years. What do you think it is? Maybe 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to speculate either, and so that's one of the things that when we've been waiting for quite a while for the IMF Article 4 consultation of this year. They actually had the initial review last summer in June or July.
June or July, yeah.
Yeah, and the report wasn't out, and then all of a sudden, about a week ago, they announced that they were going to Iraq and they were going to have a 2-day meeting with them, the IMF, and so they actually, they actually held this meeting, and now they said they've concluded the 2022 Article 4 consultation. So hopefully within the next few months we'll see that actual report will come out, and then it'll be much more detailed, and we can find out what some of this information means. But it does seem like in this article that there's a lot of details that are important to us that we're going to want to read.
Exactly, but why would they? I mean, it's obviously been produced because the phrase in the final statement means that it exists. Why can't we get access to it? You're better than anybody at digging these things up.
Well, because they haven't published it yet. They might have shared it. They might have shared it with Iraq, but they haven't published it for all.
Yeah, because this is a quote directly from it, but we don't have the whole thing. We just don't have the whole thing. Well, we can hope that you'll get it first because you usually do. So,
yeah.
Anyway, like I said, it's a mixed bag. But one thing that's really great is that their reserves are way up there, and even going another 10% higher in the next year or so. So there's no reason why they don't have the ability to make that transition to a float if and when they want to. That part of it is clearly locked in. And before, remember the reserves got down to 50 or 45, something really scary at one point.
Right.
And now they're up higher than they've ever been since we did this 15, 17 years ago. Started this 17 years ago.
Well, and again, I don't remember if you remember or not, but we talked a lot about the transition from going from a fixed exchange rate to a float for emerging market countries in the past, and what that transition involves, and how to go about it, and what they need to do to create the circumstances so that the transition is I forget the term that we used to use, but
as seamless as possible, basically.
Right. Yeah. And so building up large amounts of reserves like that are all part of that transition.
And very key, because you used to say it's a one-way street. Once you begin it, you can't back up. So the fact that they have this backup in terms of reserves, huge reserves relative to their money supply, means that they are in the best position they've ever been to make the transition.
Right.
And you're gonna read something else tonight that'll even more positively.
Yeah, I think one of the words that we used to say was a disorderly or orderly exit.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that was pertaining to whether the central bank, had all of the conditions created for the transition from a peg to a float, and whether it would have orderly transition or a disorderly. And there wasn't any necessarily one bad or the other. It's just an explanation of what the differences were.
Right. It could be jerky or it could be smooth. In this case, I think it's going to be relatively smooth because they've got these reserves to back them up. Huge.
Right.
I mean, relative to the money supply, this is a huge amount of reserves, probably highest in the world relative to its money supply.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next one. Iraq ranks 13th among the largest countries with gold reserves.
30th, not 13th. 30th. It's still great. It's still great, but it's not 13th.
Yeah, that's what mine says at the top on the title. But
read it again. 30th.
30th. Yeah, you're right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to correct you, but it is what it is. But the point is, read the thing and you're going to see it. It's a huge advance in 1 year.
So the World Gold Council announced on Monday that there's a great demand for buying the yellow metal by international central banks, while noting that Iraq has maintained its 30th rank in the world among the largest countries with gold reserves. The council said in its latest schedule for the month of December and its independent follow-up that purchase of gold from central banks rose significantly during the month of October as central banks added 31 net tons of gold to their global international reserve. The added gold purchases were limited to the central banks of the United Arab Emirates, which was the largest buyer during the aforementioned month, as it added just over 9 tons to its gold reserves, and the Turkish central bank also bought 9 tons of gold last October. Uzbekistan also added 9 tons, Kazakhstan 3 tons, India and Qatar 1 ton each. He pointed out that Iraq maintained its global position after it rose 10 ranks in the month of July after purchasing 34 tons of gold to reach the rank of 30 out of 100 countries listed in the table with the largest gold reserves. So that its possession of gold reached 130.4 tons, which represents 8.4% of the rest of its other reserves.
Can you stop for a second? This is really fascinating. First of all, they ranked 40th. Now and in 1 month, because they bought 34 tons of gold, they ranked to 30th. That 34 tons of gold is 3 more than all those 6 countries you listed earlier in October purchase. I mean, this is a huge purchase. It represents a 1/3 increase in their total reserves of gold. If you think about it, they went from 90-something tons to 130 tons in one swoop. July. They're clearly setting themselves up to really be a player. That's all I can say.
Okay, I can't really comment any more than that.
Yeah, I mean, and when you read the rest of this, you're going to see that they're up there. The 30th in the world. There's 200 countries in the world. Think about that. 230, and you know that he's going to read it here. So let's go ahead and read it. You're going to find out there's a lot of gold in America and other places, but for them to be 30th as a little country called Iraq out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, that's a lot of gold. Go ahead.
The World Council stated that the total gold reserves for the first 5 Arab countries, namely Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Algeria, Iraq, and Egypt, rose to 1,039,000 tons as a result of the purchase of large quantities of the yellow metal by both Iraq and Egypt. And globally, the United States of America still sits on top of the rest of the countries with the largest possession of gold in the world, with 8,133,000 tons, followed by Germany with 3,355,000 tons, and then Italy came in with 2,451,000 tons, while the Lao people, Republic, ranked 100th with 900 kilograms, preceded by the Republic of Cuba by 1 ton. On June 27th, Iraq announced the purchase of a new quantity of gold, approximately 34 tons, an increase of 35% over what it had in its possession. It is noteworthy that the World Gold Council, which is based in the United Kingdom, has extensive experience and deep knowledge of the factors causing market change, and its members consist of the largest and most advanced gold mining companies in the world.
So what we're seeing is Iraq positioning itself with the big guys. I mean, clearly it's not Germany or United States, but when you think that they raised their gold ownership by 1/3 in 1 month, they clearly get it. They clearly get it that fiat currencies are no longer going to be the game in the world, and that most of the countries are going to go to a gold-based currency. This is what the BRICS is all about. You know, you've heard of BRICS, right?
Oh, yeah.
Brazil and China and Russia and India and whatever. There's 5 or 6, and now Turkey wants to join. They are going off the gold. I mean the dollar standard and going to a gold standard for purchasing of oil. And that's why Iraq's saying, you know what, if we want to be ball players, we got to go with them or be ahead of them. And I think they're trying to get ahead of them. And these reserves, even after purchasing all this, they still are also increasing their total reserves as well, from 90 to 100 billion dollars worth. So it's all good. I think it's all good.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think this is really sending a clear message that the financial system in Iraq is pretty solid.
Yes, and it means that they're getting ready for something. I can't help believe that they're really, really getting close at this point. You're going to read another article shortly, which proves what I just said. Go ahead.
Well, this next one here is from the Prime Minister. Al-Sudani meets with the governor of the central bank, and he issues directives related to the provision of foreign currency.
This is the one I was referring to.
and I'll read this, and then we might have to discuss it because there's a lot of mitigating things in here that people may or may not understand. So I'll have to kind of go back on this. But it says, on Sunday, Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani met with the governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, Mustafa Ghalib Makif. A statement from al-Sudani's office stated that the latter listened to a briefing on the process of regulatory work and the policies of the central bank in the financial and monetary sectors. Sudani directed to conduct the necessary treatments to provide foreign currency in the local market in accordance with the mechanisms and legal systems of the central bank, and to also provide it to citizens wishing to travel or receive treatment outside Iraq. And he stressed going ahead with the financial and economic reform program for the financial and banking system, which was included in the ministerial curriculum to lead to the national economy to steady growth, which will reflect positively on the citizens' livelihood and the level of financial empowerment.
My turn?
Yeah.
What is amazing about this is that they have agreed to allow foreign currencies to be traded within the country of Iraq. Before that, Iraq's currency wasn't tradable anywhere else in the world, and the Iraqis weren't allowed to really trade in anything except dollars and dinars. Now they're saying, you know what? Let's let all the other foreign countries come in. This has to be a two-way street. If you let other foreign countries come in, at some point you're going to have to let your currency go out. Is that not true? Otherwise, people, what are they going to buy the foreign currencies with? They're going to want to buy it with their Iraqi dinars because that's all they got. So what you're seeing is that this is really close to a float, to an internationally Chapter 8 recognizable in the big players game transfer of funds between foreign currencies of all kinds, including the dinar. You don't think so?
I agree. I believe that, well, first of all, the daily auctions also become part of this discussion because that is the mechanism that they use to provide foreign currency right now. People spend dinar in Iraq for dollars, for instance, as an example, and then that allows them to use those dollars to pay for imports. But there's always been limitations on how many dollars you could get, and that being because of corruption, smuggling. It could be they limit citizens to how many dollars they can get. But the fact that the Prime Minister has allowed the central bank to increase the flow of or to liberalize the foreign exchange, he's basically saying, we have anti-money laundering laws in place, and we have regulatory effects in place that now we can become more liberal, as the IMF would like us to be, by freeing up the foreign exchange. And you are correct.
That's crazy. I want you to expand on that because we used many months, years ago, the term liberalized. I want you to expand on what that means from the IMF's point of view, because you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Liberalizing you know what I'm talking about?
Well, you say what you want, and then I'll comment.
No, I just remember. I remember you saying in the past that the IMF wanted Iraq to liberalize its treatments of.
Well, right. They want people to be able to get foreign currency anywhere and anywhere within the country for whatever purpose they need. Exactly,
and that was a key in the Article 4 a year or two ago. Really big. Remember, it was you talked about it at length.
Well, yes. No, I have talked about it frequently because it's important. I mean,
yeah, it's one of the keys. And now the Prime Minister is saying we're ready to go on that. That's big to me.
Right, and the concern before was always that it would drain their reserves.
Exactly. Exactly. Now the reserves are so high that they don't need to worry about it.
Right, and they believe that they have policies in place that they can, from maintaining a certain amount of what would you call it? Not security, but validation that the transactions are legit. You know, it's not just going to Iran, for instance. But liberalization is very critical for the, you know, as we're talking about here, to be able to buy and sell foreign currencies within the country. It also has a lot to do with the exchange rate, because the daily auctions, excuse me, not only are the basis for providing the foreign currency for imports and exports and so on, but it also provides a balance. It's a mechanism for the exchange rate to be stable in the country. And recently, that mechanism has been stressed a little, because when the Central Bank of Iraq changed the exchange rate a year and a half ago to 1460, it doesn't matter whether it was 1170 or 1460. If the official rate is changed, you still have to be within 2% to maintain stability within the country. And so now they're at almost 1,500 dinar. So if you take 1460 and you give 2% of that, it's about 36 or 37 dinars. So when you hit 1,500 dinars, you are at 3 or 4%. So you're now out of compliance with the IMF directives as well. So the flexibility, the ability to get foreign currency, all play a part in maintaining the exchange rate as well, because the mechanism is the daily auction for all of that.
But they're currently within the 2%, right?
No, they're not. They
just recently dropped out?
Yes, recently they have gone up to almost 1,500 dinars to 1. So they are now outside the 2% compliance. So you have to get back into compliance, and so there's, again, the mechanism of a balance between dinars and dollars. So if they're going to dump more dollars, then they also have to put more dinar. The dinar, they may have to strengthen the dinar by either reducing the amount of dinar in circulation or increasing the amount of dinar in circulation. So that's an issue as well. And it is, currently it's about 83 trillion dinars in circulation, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think you're going to read that thing.
But that's another factor when you get into the daily currency auctions. Like I said, there's so many factors that play a part with the daily currency auctions, that they do so many different things. You hear the gurus often talk about them reducing the money supply. Well, you can't reduce the money supply, because as long as you're performing the daily currency auction, if you were to reduce the money supply, let's say that take the dollars out or remove the dinar, then it would create demand for the dinar and strengthen the dinar. Well, they don't want to strengthen it any more than a certain amount right now. So you can't just remove dinar from circulation, because that's what they use on a daily basis. So there's a fine line in all of these different things on how to maintain it.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to read shortly that the actual value of the dinar is higher than the exchange rate.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next article here. The central bank sets a date for offering the 20,000 dinar currency to the market. Again, this was something that came out about halfway through the year. There was talk about this, and we were trying to figure out what this is all about. Why would they introduce a 20,000 dinar note when they already have a 10 and a 25,000 dinar note? And they announced just a couple of weeks ago that it said the central bank has set the date for offering the 20,000 dinar note to the market. For the first time, the central bank's reserve exceeded the threshold of 90 billion dinars, as this number is very large. You're right, $90 billion, sorry. As this number is very large and indicates a bulwark for the recovery of the economy and a great support for the value of the Iraqi currency, he said, noting that the value of the Iraqi currency, or the balance, exceeded 160%. as the value of the Iraqi dinar amounted to more than 1.5 dinars.
Can we stop there?
Yep.
What does that mean? What does that mean? That's what I just told you a minute ago. The actual value of the dinar, and we had a guy, you sent me an email once saying that there was a central bank member, I don't know who it was, said that that's exactly what is being said here, is that the actual value is 160% higher or is 60% higher than the nominal value, or in other words, 1.5 dinars. So you're looking at a dinar that's at an exchange rate of what is 14? What's the current exchange rate?
1460.
1460, but in fact, it's 60% stronger than that. So they have plenty of room to, in spite of the 3% variance between that and that stupid auction rate, if anything, they have room to go up, not worry about it. And that was a big concern. Remember, they said many times. There were economists on both sides of the aisle. Some would say, well, if we go to a float, it's going to crash the value of the dinar. Well, not if it's 160% of what it's locked at. They have no risk. I mean, their risk is minimal. If they go to a float, it's going to go up. That's what he's saying. Don't you think so?
Right. Yeah, I think it gets a little confusing because the dinars have 3 zeros on them, and so technically it's 83 trillion dinar in circulation compared to the U.S. dollar. So it's a 1 to 1,000 ratio. But if they took the 3 zeros off the dinar, then the coverage on the currency would be 160%, or in other words, it's more than 1 to 1. It's 160%. Do you see what I'm saying here?
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that this statement is referring to the reserves. I think the statement is referring to the value of the currency itself, not the value as opposed in comparison to the amount of reserves they have, which we've already seen 2 articles saying they're high. He's saying on the market, the actual value of the currency is higher than what we have it pegged at. So we shouldn't have a fear of floating it. That's what I read it. I don't think it's related to the reserves, level of reserves, because in fact, you got 90 billion in reserves and 83 trillion in dinars. That's a 100%, not 160% variance. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
In other words, every dinar is out there is more than covered, but not by 160%, but maybe by 110% or 115%. So I think this statement that the value of the Iraqi currency or the balance exceeds 160%. In other words, the true value is 1.5 dinars for each dinar. That's what he says. The value of the Iraqi dinar amounts to more than 1.5 dinars. So we're not at a risk of floating the currency and fearing that it'll go down. If anything, it's going to go up by 50%.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
Now, 50% is not a lot of money. I mean, for us as investors, we're going from 14 to whatever. I don't know. You're not going to get to 10 cents. In other words, you're going to go from a penny to a penny and a half. Whatever the point, whatever it is, it's better than going down, and that's why I think this is very good, because it says they have no risk or limited risk.
Well, and again, if we continue reading here, they pretty much confirm that.
Okay, go ahead and finish.
He added, the Iraqi currency is now witnessing a significant rise and recovery. Hold on a second, I have to cough a minute. Okay. As it is considered one of the strongest international currencies, although it is not an international currency for circulation, noting that the government and the Ministry of Finance have an opportunity to assign fragile and poor groups and retirees with low values, low salaries, and those covered by social protection, and retirees through this fund by allocating part of it within the 2023 budget.
I don't know that affects us, that last part. What affects us is it's strongest in one of the strong international currencies, although not yet, I'm putting in yet, and international currency for circulation. That's the next step.
No, I agree.
What they're saying is that we're going to use some of this strength to help out poor people in the country. That's fine. We'll put that in the 2023 budget. That's all fine because they have room to do so because the currency is strong. That's all good news. Go ahead.
Right. Regarding bank control procedures, Al-Iraqiya said the government program is concerned with controlling government banks and private banks, since the latter are part of the banking sector and are covered by government control measures. He pointed out that the central bank has shifted from its traditional policy, which is represented by pursuing stability and issuing cash and others, to a large development institution, as it launched a development fund whose funds exceed 18 trillion dinars, noting that this fund contributed to bridging the government financing gap as a result of security and economic challenges and price drops, successive oil since 2014 until now. He continued, the bank launched initiatives and projects through loans that exceeded 15 trillion dinars for industry, agriculture, housing, and trade policies, noting that the initiatives also included empowering women and unemployed youth, in addition to allocating billions of dinars from bank funds to support cultural institutions, including rehabilitation, Al-Muntabi Street, churches, mosques, and theaters. Regarding the new 20... Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
What this is saying is that they took 15 trillion dinars. It was about $15 billion. That's a lot of money for Iraq. And they're moving it into industry, agriculture, housing, and trade projects out of oil. See? They're making the move, and this is from the government doing this, out of this wealth that they've got now. Remember years ago they were in such deep deficits and everything, and they were borrowing money from the central whatever, not the IMF, but the other one. And now they just pulled out $15 billion, and they're throwing it into other than oil investments. This is really key. Okay?
Yep. No, I agree. And then
they're finally getting around to actually acting on what they've talked about. That's what I'm trying to say.
Regarding the new 20,000 dinar category, Al-Iraqiya stressed that the 20,000 dinar category is an intermediate currency between the 25,000 and the 10,000, and it will have a role in redrawing the structure of banknotes, noting that this category will be acceptable and with high security specifications. And he continued, the issuance of this category is not related to the budget, since the central bank has an independent budget rather than it is related to printing procedures, choosing colors, and security marks, suggesting this currency is issued at the end of 2023.
So why, I asked this to you the other day on a phone call when you called me and told me about this, why in the world, if they've got a 25K note and a 10K note, would they issue a 20K note? Well, it seems to me there's only one reason. They expect the value, the real value of the 25K note to be greater than $100, like our $100 bill. Too big. You know, we don't have a $500 bill note anymore. Why? Because it's too big. Well, the 25K note is going to be worth too much money. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be worth, it's worth $25 now. It may be worth $100 in, what is it, 2020, in 2023, maybe? Mm-hmm. And they're going to need something. They're going to need a smaller note that will be the biggest note in order to not go crazy and have too many big notes out there. And so, what's the procedure? We've already talked about the procedure. When they start issuing the 20K note, they will be withdrawing the 25K note, just like back in the 20s, they got rid of $500 bills in America. There used to be a $1,000 bill in America, not anymore. Well, that had nothing to do with inflation or anything, or oil. But this one has to do with the growth of the economy is going to be such, they expect that they, with their reserves, that the value of the dinar is going to rise between now and the end of 2023 to where they will need to have their biggest note only be 20,000 dinars. That's a good sign.
No, I agree. And there's two key points I want to bring up here. The first is there's another project that they talk about from time to time, and I've mentioned it, and it's a discussion of deleting the 3 zeros, and it's not this project that we're talking about with the currency here now. It's a separate project, and it's concerning because they mentioned when they talk about it that they need government approval, the parliament approval. And everyone knows that if the Central Bank of Iraq is going to do like a LOP or a neutral event, that would require parliamentary approval. And so what this is telling me is that that project of a LOP or a neutral event is not going to happen. There's been comments and articles saying that they're not going to do it, but it kind of confirms it because first is they're not talking about that in this article at all. Secondly, they're talking about introducing a 20,000 dinar note, which there would be no need for if you were going to implement that project. And so,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So the fact that there's 2 projects out there, one requires the government approval, which whenever they talk about that a lot, they always say, but Parliament must approve. So that is, that you don't need Parliament approval for the central bank to just do what it's doing, which is to restructure the banknotes normally, where you don't change the intended value of the note. But you do if you're going to change the intended value of them. So that it takes, I think we can say with pretty good confidence,
certainty, yeah,
with certainty, that the idea of doing a neutral event LOP of the Iraqi dinar is not going to happen. Now, getting back
totally
to
off
this,
the table. Totally off the table.
Totally off the table, and so then the other thing is, I think they say very clearly in here. They said the reason why they're introducing the 20,000 dinar note, and again, you wouldn't need, there would be no reason to even talk about such a thing like that if you were going to do that other plan. But the other point I wanted to make here is they say that this new 20,000 dinar note, we don't have to speculate. They said its role is going to be in redrawing the structure of banknotes. In other words, the structure of the banknotes, a structure is a 5, a 10, a 20, a 25 together. That's a structure, and they're going to introduce that 20 now. They're going to redraw what people use.
The whole structure. And the 20 itself is an intermediate currency. So it will go away. That's very clear in this.
Yes.
In other words, they're moving it down because they're going to raise the value of the dinar. That's it.
Well, they expect the value to go up. And so the other thing that is important here is because by doing this, they can also reduce the actual value of dinar in circulation, because people will migrate to these smaller notes then. You won't need these larger notes out there in circulation.
Exactly.
So yes,
it's a very good sign. And I love the fact that it says the 20,000 dinar category is an intermediate currency. In other words, it's not permanent. Right. It's working our way down to the 10, and then to the 5, and then down to the 1,000, and eventually down to a 500, and eventually you're going to be at parity with the buck. That's the goal. There's no question that that's the goal. Parity with the dollar.
So okay. So
in all currencies, I will go out on a limb on this because I've been studying this. All currencies in the world, probably within 5 years, will be gold backed.
Right.
Period.
No, I think this is
the whole problem with fiat currencies is that the central banks just literally throw debt on us and print when they need to and they put what's called inflation. They put that hidden debt on us, and we just don't have a clue. And I was just looking today. The dollar is worth 3 cents compared to what it was worth in 1971 when we went off the gold standard. Can you believe that? It's lost 97%. We don't realize that because we live and we just spend our money and then we die. But
right.
It's just so sad to think that they've been able to do this. And once you go back on a gold standard, that all goes away, and there's security in money. It holds its value. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I guess what I was trying to say here is that's I think part of the issue here with the Central Bank of Iraq is that they need, with all of this wealth in gold and in dollars in their reserves, they're making the indication here or implication that they want to strengthen the currency based on its printed values. And I think that is key, because if they're going to have international banking transactions with credibility, you can't just do like what we have talked about, where Parliament would approve some kind of a law where they would just remove the zeros. The people, they would lose confidence. They'd say, well, if you can just switch your money whenever you want.
Right.
And so it looks like they're trying to build the economy first and strengthen the dinar as a result of and growth of the dinar value based on that economy. It's kind of how I see it from when I read this here.
I'll even go out on a limb. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if within the next, 36 months maybe, Iraq joins BRICS with a gold-backed currency. I mean, it's coming. There's no doubt that that's the direction. All the big oil producers, Russia,
right,
and Saudi Arabia, they're moving that direction. The dollar is they're just pissed off because our central bank keeps printing money like it's going out of style, thanks to our president and others, and destroying the value of the dollar. And they're holding lots and lots of dollars, and they're not happy about it. So they're just going to go to BRICS, which is all gold-based, and I won't be a bit surprised. I go on a limb, I'll say within 36 months, Iraq will join BRICS with a gold-backed dinar. That's what I think will happen. And it'll float.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because once you back it by gold, there is no float. Essentially, there's no float. There's just the value of money. It is what it is then. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The only reason it goes up and down is because they changed the money supply so drastically. That's what's happened in America.
All right.
Bingo. I think we broke the code on that one.
Yep. So I have to skip down a little bit here because I think we need to catch up, but we're kind of running out of time.
All right, go ahead.
The Central Bank of Iraq, positive indicators for an increase in GDP growth rate and revenue. I thought that was a pretty good article. The governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, Mustafa Khalid Mukaf, confirmed Saturday the existence of a positive indicator that confirms the continued increase in the growth rates of domestic product and non-government revenues. The governor explained that the reserves of the central bank are variable and depend on how they're managed, according to the statements from the Iraqi news agency. He added that the reserves of the central bank change, and this depends on how the reserves are managed, in addition to ways in which Iraq was financed at the end of 2020, where the central bank, in cooperation with the financial institutions operated in Iraq and the Ministry of Finance, initiated a number of measures that have yielded over time, especially after the improvement of oil revenues. The Ministry of Finance, at a time when there was a lack of liquidity in the government, especially in the distribution of salaries, economic indicators indicate that the oil prices would improve and there would be positive indicators in the coming period. He added, these indicators were within the economic analysis and were well positive and include the rise in oil prices, the government's implementation of the white paper seriously, and then the search for an increase in non-oil government revenues. And this we expect to reap its fruit during the next stage. We pointed out that the central bank has taken a very big initiative during the last period. That's the thing that I like about this, is that it's already happened.
Yes.
We always hear about the next period, and we never know when it's going to happen. But they said it's already, as it launched an initiative within a fund that was allocating 18 trillion dinars and was distributed in various industrial, agriculture, commercial, and investment sectors, facilitating this initiative without benefit.
See, that was referred to in the previous article you read, that the central bank spent roughly $18 billion. That's a huge amount of money for a country like Iraq. And all non-oil, so they're moved, the central bank on its own, outside of the government's influence, is investing to bring Iraq into a non-oil denominated economic situation, which is great. But I would like you to comment on one thing here. This paragraph just before that. Do you know anything, the government's implementation of the white paper, seriously? What is the white paper? Do you have any idea?
Of course I do. We've been talking about it for years. The white papers were written. You just said they're posted on the website under government news. It's bookmarked at the top, and it's translated in English. And it's a plan to implement an economic diversification.
Great. I wanted you to expound on it, because that's what this is referring to. Something that's been going on for years. This paper has existed for years, and now they're saying we expect to reap its fruits during the next stage. Of course, for Iraq, in the coming months, or in the coming period, or in the next stage. Those phrases never get specific enough for our liking. That's for damn sure. Well, at least they're finally saying, you know what? Somebody has stepped up and put money behind it, namely 18 trillion dinars. And it's the central bank, not the government. It's the central bank that's doing this. It's really amazing to think that they would literally step away from the government and say, you know what? We're just going to go with the old IMF's recommendations and do it.
It's about a 60-page initiative with step-by-step instructions on how to facilitate a market economy.
Exactly. And I remember when you talked about it.
And it's absolutely, it does go into the banking system and how they facilitated things within there. But a lot of people felt it was just ink on paper. And so it looks like they are now beginning to implement at least some of the steps initially. And of course, they made it very clear, they're stating that the central bank has, kicked it off by allocating funds for the industrial, agriculture, commercial, and investment sectors. So they're initiating it, and now, in order for it to succeed, it's up to the government to. I would say they're forcing the government's hand, basically.
Yeah,
I agree.
If you think about it, they got the government to cooperate by doing some liberalization of the banking rules and reducing the number of Iraqi-owned banks and increasing the number of private banks and allowing people to get a credit card and a form of a FICA thing, or government insurance or deposit insurance. This has been going along, but it's just not going along at the pace that the central bank and the IMF want. So the IMF probably told the central bank, just start investing in Iraq. We'll cover you. They got the money now. They're sitting on all kinds of money, so they just decided to force the hand of the central government, I think.
No, I agree, and that's what we've been saying for a long time, is that's why when people talk about the currency, it's not something random or arbitrary. That there's this plan to diversify their economy away from oil dependency. And when the economy begins to flourish, then so can the dinar as a result.
Exactly.
And
your next article actually lays out, and you've talked about this 100 times, but it lays out clearly what the problem is.
Exactly.
It's Parliament.
Now it's the boot, or they're throwing it back into the government's hand now, because the central bank has done its part. But,
they're forcing the hand of the government to pass these laws.
Right.
Go ahead and read that next one, because that next one lays it out as clearly as can be.
Yeah, and this has been happening for 3-4 years. It's called Delayed and Disrupted. More than 100 laws are parked in Parliament. Stalled laws. Parliamentarians stress the effort to pass them, and observers stress the need to pay attention to the interests of the citizens. With the breakdown of many laws within the House of Representatives, members of Parliament reveal efforts to resolve their file. while observers confirm that the political moods that are preventing their passage delayed and obstructed the fate of a not small number of parliamentary laws, most of which affect issues related to the citizen and his interests that do not receive the attention of the political class, preoccupied with achieving its benefits as seen by many. In Parliament, members of Parliament are talking about more than 100 laws that are still parked in the corridors of Parliament, and talking about seeking to pass them requires only serious work. Many of the political blocs hold that many important laws, which according to the observers generate different political moods that work according to their interests, a matter that prompts the need to think about setting up a mechanism to resolve this file according to a professional perspective away from partisan consensus.
Partisan consensus. That's that's Maliki. Just put Maliki there. I mean, there's so much graft and so much, somebody is making a lot of money with the status quo, and that's why those 100 laws are sitting there. They don't want the citizen to benefit. But they're all ready to be passed, and if they were passed, and when they get passed, then things will start to move. Now, this new prime minister may be in a position to put some pressure on him, when especially if he's got the central bank behind him spending money in that direction. I'm not sure that the bad guys can hold out very much longer.
Well, and that's an interesting statement, because what we're talking about here is this is the new government's main objective was to implement the economic reforms necessary, and that it was important that they got the right people in place. It was talked about many times over the last year when they were trying to form a government. Has to be somebody strong, that's willing to cancel corruption, to go after corruption, that's willing to implement them, to move forward with the white papers, someone that's willing, to take the necessary initiative to activate these various sectors and so on. So it's all in his hands, and we've seen him in some of these articles we read earlier that he's instigated or addressed some of these things so far, but will he be able to actually do it? Now we're getting to the point where the next, like you said, the next 12 to 36 months, 1 to 3 years.
Really be important.
Yes. And we're going to see.
Earlier you'd called me a few months ago or recently, and said that you had a fear that this guy was in Maliki's back pocket. I don't think so, based on what we're reading.
Well,
I think he's decided to partner up with the central bank president, and between the two of them, they're going to force this thing.
Well, that's going to be interesting to see. I mean,
I know. But when you talk about spending $18 billion, that's a huge amount of money to be put into non-oil infrastructure, and they just went ahead and did it. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but we've been talking about this for 5-10 years. Why don't they just put some money into it? And then all of a sudden the central bank comes up and spends it out of their reserves. Obviously, they had so much that they could do it themselves, irrespective of government approval, and basically kick-started this thing off the ground.
Yeah.
And that's huge. $18 billion, you know how much money that is? That's 3 times my salary, for God's sakes. All right. Anyway, that was a
all right. So let's move on to the last one here, and then we'll do a little Q&A. We haven't talked to people in a long time.
Go ahead.
So this last article is called Foreign Direct Investment, FDI in Iraq. I've talked about that because, again, we believe that the way monetary policy works, the way a currency's value is created, all of that is based on the success and growth of a country's economy, the GDP, and so on. It's not a random act. And so here's kind of a year-end synopsis from an article here. It says, FDI in figures. Global financial direct investment, FDI, flows showed a strong rebound in 2021, up 77% to an estimated $1.6 trillion from $929 billion in 2020, surpassing the pre-COVID levels. In other words, the world is starting to turn around. FDI flows in developing countries increased by 30%, but almost three-quarters of the total increase in global FDI USD 500 billion was recorded in developed economies, with developing economies showing a more modest recovery growth. FDI inflows to West Asia and the Middle East increased by more than 49% in 2021 to 90 billion USD. According to
stop for just a second. Now these numbers. Of course, the people are listening. They don't see what I see. It says in Iraq, the foreign direct investment rebounded by 77% last year in 2021, versus in developing countries 30%. So, I mean, think about that. That's double plus some, double and a half what has been happening around the rest in the big guys. So they're catching up fast. It's kind of like what China did from 1970 to 2000. They were going like 12% annual growth. This is what's happening in Iraq. It's the old, what I always used to say, it's the Wild West. Money is actually starting to flow into Iraq, and it's a good sign.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'm not going to read everything here because it's just a lot of numbers that can confuse people, but I think...
Yeah, it will confuse it. It will. But that's the point. I think that's the point, is that it's twice and a half times what's going on in developed countries, percentage-wise, and that's huge. And we're not even talking about a small amount of money. We're talking billions.
Yep.
18 billion by the central bank, plus direct investment from foreigners of who knows how much else.
Yep. And I'll just read a couple of quotes here. It says, Iraq has had trouble attracting foreign capital because of its substantial security problems, fragile institutions, and lack of governance. Nevertheless, hydrocarbons continue to draw in foreign companies, and the majority of FDI goes to the oil industry. In addition to the oil industry, the production of cement and the construction and public works sectors offer interesting opportunities for investment. The United States and the European Union are the leading investors in Iraq. In 2020, the electricity sector also attracted some of the largest investment projects, with GE, Siemens agreeing to upgrade Iraq's power stations and transmission grid. Iraq has long-term potential. Iraq has long-term potential for foreign investments. In fact, the country has the fourth largest proven oil reserves in the world and needs major reconstruction efforts and infrastructure development. According to Iraqi law, a foreign investor is entitled to make investments in Iraq on terms no less favorable than those applicable to an Iraqi investor, and the amount of foreign participation is not limited. However, Iraq's national investment law limits foreign direct and indirect ownership of natural resources, particularly the extraction and processing of natural resources. Further restrictions apply to the ownership of banks and insurance companies. According to the national investment law, the Iraqi government reserves the right to screen foreign direct investment. Iraq is making slow progress enacting laws and developing institutions needed to implement economic policies. Furthermore, the political reforms are still needed to assure investors' concerns regarding the uncertain business climate. So I just wanted to read that because people are always asking, why are things not moving along better? Well, it's pretty clear that, I mean, you know, I've stated this, Iraq is completely rebuilding a war-torn country, and they are rebuilding this country from the ground up. And that's why it's taking a long time, because they have a lot of work to do. And there needs to be successes. The dinar doesn't stand, the value of the dinar doesn't stand on its own. The value of the dinar is the response to these other activities pertaining to the economy that need to succeed. And then we'll see the dinar go up.
I agree, 100%. What's amazing is you know, we talked about this for years. We've talked about those laws being passed and how we, you know, just sweated over the fact that nothing was happening from the government's perspective. But somehow they've done an end run, and now they've got foreign direct inflow. In fact, earlier it says, since 2013, the FDI inflow has been negative. But now it's not only positive, but it's big time. They're getting into hydrocarbons, which is oil, of course, but they're also getting into cement, public works, construction, and that $18 billion that the Central Bank of Iraq has invested is literally kickstarting this thing. We've been waiting for this so long, and it's now finally happening. So the fact that the laws have not been passed is almost being overshadowed by the fact that they're gonna get these people to come in and invest anyway, and they've got a rate, and they've got a good rate to do so. I mean, think about it. That investment law is really a good law. Sure, it does limit some things, but it benefits in other things, and they can eventually get rid of the restrictions on ownership of banks and insurance companies and extraction of materials are owned by foreigners. We have those kind of laws, but not nearly as many. But they're making progress irrespective of that. That's my point. That somehow they've gotten around the government's inactivity and really begun to see some investment coming into Iraq, and that's all we need to see. In my view, that's all we need to see to go to Chapter 8. We can get around the laws and go to Chapter 8 of the IMF Charter and join the big guys and actually float the currency. I think we're close. I really do. Hello. That sucks.
Are you there?
Yeah, now I am. What happened? Did I get
No, you're there. You're fine. I accidentally muted myself.
I hope somebody heard something I said, because I just went on for 5 minutes.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is excellent that they're actually calling for the activation of the private sector, and they're putting their money where their mouth is here.
That's the point. They're putting their money there. That's what matters, because even though those laws aren't passed yet, they will eventually. They're going to have to follow. They're not leading, so they're going to have to follow. That's the bottom line. Central banks are forcing their hand.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it talked about America and the European Union. That's the meat and potatoes of the world right there. And if we go in, trust me, it's like the Wild West. Once you get a few of them out there, the next thing you know, you're going to have wagon trains going out.
Yeah.
And staking their grub, their land, and all that. It's going to be huge. And I think that's why they think over the next 24 months, maybe, we're going to see a big change. You're going to go from a 25K note to a 20K note, and then you're going to go down to a 10K. The 20 will go away, and it'll be a 10, and then next thing you know, the 10 will go away, and there'll be a 5 will be the top. And by the time they get to the point where the 1,000 dinar note's the top, you're just about to America's standards. It won't take that long. I don't think it'll take that long. And it's not going to happen in 24 months. Don't get me wrong. I don't think, but it'll happen hopefully within my lifetime.
Right. Well, let's we've been on for an hour and a half now. Let's get, if people want to talk, say hi, have questions.
How many people got? How many are listening still?
There's quite a few.
Right.
The 5-star gets you in the queue, I believe. So if you want to talk with us, you hit 5-star. I don't know if that's correct or not.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't done a conference call in so long. I forget how these. How
it used to be 6-star, I thought.
Or star 6.
Oh yeah, maybe it was star 6. I don't know.
Let's see here. So if somebody wants to get in the bring in a question, maybe If somebody can figure it out and tell us how to do it. hit 5-star to get in. See if that works. Oh, yeah, here's one. Okay, one just popped up. So 812 area code. 812, you're on. Oh, are you there? No, I kicked him up.
Unmuting.
Okay. Hello, 812, you're on. Hello, 812? I unmuted him.
Hello.
There we go.
Okay,
Hello,
am I on?
You're on.
You're here,
Okay.
Annie.
How did you get in? How did you get in?
What I was wanting to know, you said, okay, the 50,000, 100,000, 25,000 are not going to be any good.
No, we didn't.
Never said anything like that.
Okay, I misunderstood that. Sorry.
There's no such thing.
Here's the way we believe it happens. As the value of the dinar rises, the large notes, and there's probably a very few 50,000s around, but the large notes, like the 25,000 dinar note, will become worth more and more and more to the point where they will not be practical to use for daily commerce. So the central bank will just start destroying them. They'll bring them in and destroy them, they'll replace them with a 20. Then eventually the 20 itself will get worth so much that it's an intermediate use. They'll start removing it and go down to the 10, and so on. But it only happens as the value of the dinar rises, and the value will rise gradually. There's no RV. There's no 0 to 350. $3.50. It's going to go from what it is today. It's currently worth 60% more than what it's pegged at. So we expect it to go up when they float it, and it'll float and go up and up and up. You know, I would think over the next 2 years you're going to see it go up substantially, but not to any $3. But it might go up to 50 cents or 30 cents, whatever. And as that happens, a big 25K dinar note is going to be worth so much money they can't afford to have it out in circulation. So as people spend them or put them in the bank, which is what they're going to do, they'll burn them. They'll just literally burn them. And that will reduce the money supply so that it constantly stays in parallel to the rise of the value.
That's the problem with these gurus, because they created this for many years now. They've misled people. And so people don't understand how the dinar, if it is going to ever go up in value, how it's going to go up in value. They keep talking about an RV on a daily basis, so people don't understand when we actually come out and talk about real monetary policy and how it actually does happen if it goes up in value. They're like, well, that's not what I've been told. That's not what I've heard about over the years. Because you can't just arbitrarily, when you have 83 trillion dinar in circulation, just change the value significantly. It would bankrupt the country instantly. And the world. It would just be unbelievable. So the only way they can raise the value is to build an economy, and as the economy grows, it's like building, well, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a yard with nothing in the backyard, and over time you build a playhouse, and then you build a pool, and then you put in some flowers and some plants, and eventually you've got this big, beautiful backyard. Well, now all of a sudden your backyard is worth more, and therefore the currency can be worth more. And so that's kind of what we're implying here, is that Iraq is trying to build their economy, and as they do, and as they begin to prosper, they can allow it to go up gradually over time. It's not going to be a random act. It's not going to be overnight where you wake up. It's going to be over time. Tomorrow it might be worth what it is. The next day it might be worth a little bit more. 5 years from now it might be worth significantly more. But it's going to be gradually over time.
Right.
I hope that makes a little more sense. Because Iraq can't rebuild their entire country overnight. And they have to do it gradually, and therefore the currency can only go up gradually.
Bingo.
So I was hoping when I asked her how she got in that she would have asked how she got in, but if anybody else wants to get in the Q&A, again, I have it as 5-star to get in, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's *6 or something. But if anybody wants to chat or ask a question and figure out how to get in the queue, I will click on you and we can chat.
It's sad if we can't get anybody else in.
I don't see anybody else getting in. I wish she would have told us how she got in, because I think that would have helped everybody else.
Tell her to come back.
No, I don't see anybody coming in. Oh, here's somebody. Okay. Oh, she came back in.
Good. How'd she do it?
You're on, 812. Hello.
I hit 5-star.
Oh, so you did. It's 5-star. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, dear. Appreciate that, because
You're welcome.
maybe you're the only one on the call. That'd be funny.
Right.
Not very funny, but.
All right, so we're going to wrap up. It's the call here. I've got things to do yet tonight, and so if anybody wants to chat or say hello, your last chance. 5-star will get you in the queue, and you can say hi and ask your question. And otherwise, we're just going to wrap up the evening and wish everybody happy holidays. Yeah, I don't see anybody else.
I'll end it with this. From my perspective, I am very positive.
Okay, I am too. I think we've been talking for years about all these things that need to happen, and it's actually starting to happen. So
yep.
Even though
Finally seeing some action.
Even though it's not like the kind of instantaneous gratification that the gurus will put out on a daily basis that they think they're going to happen, we are seeing bits and pieces of the bricks. They're building the brick by brick, and they're creating the environment in which Iraq can economically succeed. So on that, I'm just going to end the call, Steve. I thank you for coming on and chatting. I hope everybody happy holidays, and I appreciate everybody for coming on the call, and we'll talk to you all later.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. I already told you go look for a movie. You said it was great, and you started walking away, and I started asking me another question that I don't think about.
My choice, right?
No.
Oh.
I'll find one online. On the Roku.
Oh, okay.
You don't want to just, like, relax or what?
Yeah, Roku's fine with me.